Welcome, Tigercast fans. We're back. It's still early January, but we're back with a bit of a difference tonight. This is the Tiger Summit, I think you dubbed it, CB. CB, you're here again tonight. Welcome, mate.
Yeah, good evening. How are you? I'm very
Going well,
excited
thanks.
about tonight.
Yeah, no, it's very good. We've kept this one under wraps, so we're just going to be dropping it on people, hopefully in a few hours' time once I get all the editing done. But Summercast, the premise is we're going to try and interview some past players and just re-engage with the audience, and hopefully we can hear from some of the Tiger guys. And we're kicking it off with a ripper tonight. He played 123 games, kicked 53 goals for the Tigers before finishing his career at Brisbane. He was the Jack Dyer medalist in 91. He wore the long sleeves with style, beautiful handball and a ball magnet, and he wore the number 4. Craig Lambert, welcome to the show.
Great to be here, guys. Fairly excited. Heard big things about the podcast, actually.
Don't go raising the bar too early.
It's funny, I was just doing some Googling during the day, and there's legitimately one picture of you playing in a short sleeve top jersey.
Funny, like there might be one. I reckon it was a time that obviously, I know probably some of the listeners of the sad time when obviously I left the Tigers, but I played my first game for Brisbane in 94, and a funny story actually, because I used to love the longies, and I wore the longies purely because I had really skinny white arms. I've heard all the theories why I wore long sleeves, and as you know, in Brisbane when it's hot, well, I didn't know this. The worst thing I ever wish for is rain, because it comes. So I'm there just praying for rain because it's so, and it starts to get wet. I go out. I played against the Sydney Swans that game. I think I had 7 touches for the game. Darren Creswell didn't even look at me. Just tagged me the whole game. I wore long sleeve and I lost 4 kilos a game. And from that day on, I said I'll never ever wear a long sleeve again at the Gabba. So everywhere else I wear the longie, but at the Gabba, it just I couldn't get a kick, and also too much weight. So there you go.
How do you pull up a kilo? Like next day? Holy cow!
Well, the hardest thing was because obviously, and we touch on how I got to Brisbane, but because there was a lot of expectation through that trade period, when one of the star recruits only has 7 touches, luckily we won. You're probably not the most liked person in the change room. So I had all the daggers looking at me. I was just fortunate that I became really good friends with Magic McLean, who was a captain, one of the best human beings I've met in footy. And he was a guy that grabbed me after the game and kind of said, "Lambo, no, it wasn't your day today, but let's go and have a beer." That was back in the good old days when you could have 5 or 6 years after it. And then when we played St Kilda the game, and I played okay.
So after losing 4 kilo, you hydrated appropriately.
Yeah. I was probably only had 8 or 9 actually, so I got it back pretty quick, and then a couple of Big Macs actually. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
So what are you up to these days, mate? You've obviously been out of the game itself for a while, but you worked at some various and whatnot. So what are you up to these days?
Yeah, I work for a company called Upstream Solutions, and we're a subsidiary of Fuji Xerox. So basically what we do, we sell managed print, but that's only about 30% of our business. 70% of our business is just looking at where a lot of businesses are still really manual with their processes in regards to like accounts payable, HR onboarding, anything where it's paper processed. We look to digitalise that, automate it, so there's less touch points, so your business can become a lot more efficient, productive, and these days a lot more compliant. So obviously with COVID, it's been terrible for a lot of businesses, but our technology allows you to do all your accounts payable and anything that's paper printed remote. As I saw off air, it's been a pretty hard year for a lot of people. But I think with what happened with COVID, it's fast tracked people's mentality in regards to where digitalisation and software and technology can help businesses. Yeah,
absolutely. Now, let's get to the sexy stuff, Craig. Let's get to the sexy stuff.
I knew this was coming. Yep.
So let's go back and take a journey in time. So just for our listeners out there, where did you start off? Who was your junior footy club?
Yep.
And was actually footy your passion, or was there other sports that you played as a junior?
Yeah, well, I started as a pretty chubby 5-year-old, and I started my career at North Dandenong Junior Football Club. I was a Dandenong boy. I had my brother who was 4 years older than me, so his name's Mark. So I started at North Dandy when I was about 5 for the midgets, and played there until the under 15s. I left North Dandenong, and we were able to win a couple of premierships, which were nice. I actually went to Dandenong Tech. My two passions were football and basketball. I love basketball. The only problem I had was that I had a terrible jump shot. So I actually had, I don't know whether the viewers or you guys remember Bruce Palmer. He was a legendary North Melbourne Giants coach, and he was our PE teacher, and him and I struck a really good relationship. And he actually wanted me to come down and try out for the North Melbourne Giants because I was a good ball handler, good passer and all that, but always had a terrible jump shot. And he really was a great sort of mentor for me as a 15, 16-year-old going through the, I mean, our school, Dandy Tech was a good school, but like most schools back then, there was probably good and bad. But he kept me really focused on sport. In the end, he knew that my passion was probably football, so he guided me to that. But he was a great mentor. But at age 16, 17, there was nothing between both basketball and football. Except a bad jump shot, I suppose.
Basketball's always been one of those few sports I can't play. I'm terrible at it. I was just a big unit, just put me under the ring and I could sort of throw the body around a bit.
That's all right. That works.
It works for me. It's about all I can do. Now, so you go through your junior career through Dandenong and that, and you end up at the under-19s with Sydney.
Yeah.
So I just want to know, so how young were you at the time when you end up in Sydney, and how does a young fella from Dandenong end up north at that stage?
Well, it's sort of like, it was trial by error, really. I mean, I tried out for Teal Cup and didn't make it. I remember Slug Jordan said I was too slow. Not going to make it as a 15, 16-year-old. I tried out at Footscray, which is Western Bulldogs under 19s, and they trialled me for about 2-3 weeks in regards to their pre-season and just said, no, we probably don't like the look of you, not going to make it. And then I went to my brother's best mate. His uncle was a recruiter for South Melbourne, and my brother, I'm 16, so my brother's 20. He's doing some lobbying for his younger brother, and he gets me a gig down in South Melbourne, where Lakeside Oval. I reckon I was 16, maybe turning 17, playing against under 19s. And my first game was against Richmond Footy Club, and they beat us by 160 points. I played half forward flank. Jeff Hogg, one of my great mates, played half back flank. I reckon I touched the ball 3 times. I wouldn't know what colour it was. And just the sheer size of, I think Richmond won it that year. I think it was 85. Richmond won the under 19 flag. And I played about 7 games, and I remember the coach, his name was Dennis Clark. He played at Melbourne. He had a really nice fellow. He was tough. We used to have some brutal training sessions. And he just grabbed me and he said, Lambo, I think in time you're going to be a really good player if you persist. You're just too small at this stage. So I went back and played for Dandenong in the VFA, under 19s. In the last 8 rounds, I got a chance to play some reserves footy, then some senior footy, and went okay. So that was at 17, and then the following year, there was no clubs really looking to add me, or there was no one ringing me up. So I had a chat with Mick Hawkins, who was a legendary. I think Mickey played for Oakley. I think he was VFA player, great coach, really good mentor of mine over a long period of time. But I just asked him what was the benefits of playing a senior year with Dandenong VFA, Redlegs, instead of going and playing under 19s with kids and all that. And he sort of just talked me around. He sort of said, I reckon if you can play well in that, and it was second division, it wasn't first division, but you're still playing against the men. So I played that year, and I think I had a really good year. And I think I come second in the BNF, and for a 17, 18-year-old. Playing against men, and back then the VFA was pretty tough. So if you get a kick, you always know about it, and that was where that set me up in regards to the opportunity of getting a gig at the under 19s and connecting with the great Doug Searle, who convinced me if I didn't learn how to become a great handballer, I might have a pretty short career.
So how did that initial, I suppose, contact come about with Richmond? Were they sort of watching these VFA games and scouted you out?
Yeah, well, I believe it was that they were watching the VFA games, and I got a call from from Richmond Footy Club. I can't remember who was the footy manager back then. And I rocked up, and that was 1987. And that was when, I became a great mate with Tony Free and, Trent Nichols and all those guys, that sort of played through there. And, it was incredible. I remember I was an 18-year-old again playing at my proper age group, but I'd played the year before against some really good players in the VFA, and they really test you, as you know, if you're a kid. And I got there, and Doug Searle, I've just got to take my hat off to the guy. He was a one. I mean, I always did handball as a junior, but not as dominant as what I did when I started to make the grade in 88. And he took me aside in 87, I think round 4, round 5, where and he just said, "Listen, Craig," he said, "you're probably one of the best ball getters I've ever coached in my life." He said, "But," he said, "unless you can learn how to distribute the footy to guys like Trent Nichols and these other guys who have great legs," he said, you'll be a good player, but you won't be the player you should be." So I worked on that craft pretty hard, and we made the grand final that year against North Melbourne, and we got beat by about 4 or 5 points, I think, in the end. So it all stemmed from there.
Is that the one on YouTube with the big fight?
Yeah, I think it might be, actually. Yeah, I think it might be. I would have been throwing him like Alistair Lynch, just missing everything.
So you get to 1988 and you got Kevin Bartlett at the helm. How different was the pre-season under him compared to your under-19s? What were the recollections and what were all the differences like?
Well, sort of like the journey. The journey, even like to the under-19s, was incredible. We had such a great side. Went so close to winning a premiership, and a lot of my teammates were getting chances to play reserves footy during that 87 year, which I couldn't get a chance there. And so I thought, I was lucky that year. I said I won the BNF that year, which was nice, because sort of you start to get a little bit of confidence, starting to play a bit more where you're using your hands to my style, thanks to Doug Searle. And I really couldn't crack into the senior side. And it was, I don't know, it's back then, it was all on, we had Kevin Bartlett, who was a senior coach. We had Emmett Dunn, Emmett Dunn and I are really good mates now and all that. But Emmett was our reserves coach, and Emmett probably thought that I was a tad slow. And we've had this conversation probably 3 or 4 times. And I just really couldn't get a crack through that 88 pre-season. We had so many trial matches, and I was always like, maybe back then you had no list size, right? So you could have 20 on the bench in the reserves. And I was always one of the last 3 or 4 getting a chance in reserves footy, where some of my teammates were actually playing the seniors. And I end up really nearly giving it the flick, to tell you the truth. I just thought, well, if you're not going to give me a go, I might as well just go back to Dandenong. And I didn't know this, but there was about 2 trial matches to go before we played Melbourne round 1, 1988. But Doug Searle had gone up to Kevin Bartlett and said to KB, said, "Listen, if you don't give this kid a chance through the reserves, I'm going to walk as the under-19s coach." Now, I didn't know that until later on. And I got a chance in the second last trial match. We played Collingwood, I think, at Latrobe, and I had the great General Lee, Mark Lee, coming back from injury as our ruckman. Imagine that. And it was like silver service for 4 quarters down my throat. It was like, well, I thought, how easy is this? And had a really good game, as you would with Mark Lee playing twos. And KB saw that game. And KB rang me, I think, on the Sunday night. He said, "Mate, I really liked your game on the weekend." He said, "I wouldn't mind playing you against Footscray at Western Oval, our last match before round 1." And I literally was in shock. I thought, I can't believe KB's rang me up. Don't know how he got my number. And secondly, I'm playing senior footy. And I remember, as you're lucky enough to play a bit of footy and learn that probably, we all know that last round of the pre-season, most guys, especially senior players, aren't going that hard, are they? Because they just want to be right for round 1. But here's here's a 19-year-old from Dandenong who's hanging on by a thread. I don't know that, and I go out and played, and I think I did about 40 times, and played really well. And I remember it was a Saturday. The Sunday, I suppose I can say, I was just having two or three beers on a Sunday with a couple of my dandy mates, thinking, I'm probably no chance. I might be able to hang on for a reserve spot. And I get a call from KB, and he says, Craig, he said, loved your game yesterday. There's a list coming out the Herald Sun tomorrow. There's a list of 50 players on that list. He said, you won't be on that list, but don't panic. You're on our list, the proper list, and you'll be playing your first game against Melbourne on Saturday against and round one. So
that's right. And that's what takes you to the next thing. So I'm going to set the scene here, Craig. So okay. I'm going to talk about 80, 88, and I'm going to pick 3 games, and I'll get you to talk us through them. So the first one is round 1, 1988, Monday, April 4 versus Melbourne. The debut game. I've checked out the stats here. 35,000 people are there.
Yep.
And I tried to get a starting lineup, but I couldn't find it. But I reckon Johnny Manton, Bomber James, Michael Pickering, Flea, Mitchell, Roach, Hogg, McKellar, to name a few, they would have been playing with you. So what do you remember about the lead-up and the game itself? And can you actually tell us what your starting number was?
My starting number was 53 for any of the Tigers who they always put me down as number 4. But as you could tell, I wasn't rated too highly early on with number 53. And I'll tell you the story. I got the number 4, which is quite funny actually. But my first number was 53, and I think I played in that jumper for at least 7 or 8 games against Melbourne. The recollection, really, it's sort of like it's a bit of a blur because you've gone probably from 4 weeks before that thinking you're going back to playing VFA to rocking up and playing with guys like Dale Wapen and these absolute superstars. And I remember just the speed of the game. Early on, I remember I had a really good sort of track for the footy, and ground level ball was one of my strengths and all that. And I remember I could see that I was going to get there before Rod Grinter, and I'm thinking, well, if I brace myself right here, I should be okay. And I remember him hitting me, and I swear it was like every bone in my body just shattered. I just couldn't believe the intensity and the size and the power of these athletes and all that. And as the game went on, I remember the late Jimmy Steins, who was a superstar. He was just putting it down Greg Healy's throat and all that, and they ended up beating us. I think they beat us by about 7 or 8 goals. But I remember I did some really good things around the wing and were able to get out of trouble and set up some really good play. And I think I might have got 13, 14 touches for the game. But just the speed and the power and the brutal strength of the game was just was incredible, really.
That's great. Now, so you got rolled round 1, 2, 3, and 4. You lose.
Yeah.
But we get to round 5.
What a reminder. That's good. That's good of you, CV.
Mate, people accuse me of not researching, but I research, man. but round 5, you finally get there and you get your first senior win versus Fitzroy. Now, I want you to be honest with me, mate. How hard did you and the boys celebrate that?
Well, mate, we probably would have celebrated well into Sunday. Back then it was like if you come off the game okay, it was all bets off, and you'd sort of you drink whenever the tunnel closed. When did the tunnel close? By about 7 o'clock. You'd finish up about 7 o'clock, and you get the cab home, and you probably wake up about 1 o'clock, and first thing you do is go to KFC, and that gets you back, and then just lie and watch a bit of something on the telly and all that. And then I was actually my first year of league footy. I finished my 4th year of my plumbing apprenticeship actually. So on a Monday I'd go and dig holes Monday to Friday, digging holes and get ready for the next game. So but we celebrated pretty hard. And I think I might have been on. I think Jimmy Wynn was playing on me that game. I think, if I can remember. I've had a few concussions, so the memory's not as good as what it used to be.
Yeah, he was a hard footballer, Jimmy Wynn, wasn't he? He was a hard mongrel.
He was tough, yeah. He was one that you had to earn every kick on him. He was a ripper. So but I had some, as I said, you mentioned before. I had Dale Waitman, who one of the greatest players I've ever played with, just always in my ear and all that, just sort of give me a little bit of advice. The only problem with Flea was his advice. What probably wasn't pertinent to Craig Lambert, because I'd say, mate, I'm starting to get tagged a little bit, Flea. They're just hanging on. He goes, mate, it's simple, mate. Just punch him straight in the nose. Just whack him. And I said, mate, I said, you can't punch him, Flea. Mate, if they hold you, you're allowed to punch him. So I didn't do that for a couple of years, but I learned probably in my 3rd, 4th year. If I didn't whack him, punch him, I tell you what, you're going to have a dirty day. So you had to learn to sort of give him one.
Absolutely. And the final game I want to bring up in your debut year, by round 12, the Tigers are 3-9. But all of a sudden in round 12, you clip Carlton, with Flea doing what he does best, and Hoggy getting on the end of a few, and Chris Pym slots 3. For the viewers out there, how good is it beating Carlton?
Well, it's great beating Carlton, but I was a Carlton supporter. So growing up, I was fanatical. I mean, my brother and I used to go to Princess Park every home game with my dad and all that. So, but to beat, obviously, I mean, any win, I suppose in your first year, and obviously, I mean, I was a footy tragic, so I mean, I might have barracked for Carlton, but I mean, I watch every game I could watch. So you knew Richmond was struggling through that period. So you get to a club and you sort of become a part of the culture of that footy club. And anyone who's lucky enough to put a Richmond jumper on and walk through Punt Road and see some of the great sides, of the 70s and 80s and all that, you automatically become a part of that sort of culture. And so to win a game, especially against one of your arch rivals like Carlton, I mean, I learned to hate Carlton pretty quick when Wayne Johnson tried to whack me that game. So it was a short love affair once I started playing league footy with Carlton Footy Club.
To be fair, the Dominator did clip a few blokes.
He didn't miss many.
So your first season winds up. We finished 10th with 8 wins, 14 losses, which was a vast improvement from the year before when we won the Wooden Spoon. Was there a sense of optimism around the playing group and the club for the future?
Yeah, there was. It was sort of like, because there was a few of us young blokes who'd come through the system and all that. Obviously, we some legends like Jimmy Jess and Michael Roach and Flea and General and all that, and who were all sort of coming to the latter part of their careers. But there was a sense of sort of some good kids coming through that that could elevate. Obviously Hoggy and even Alan McCullough was probably a year or two older than me, but it was there was a sense of that sort of like, if we can stick together, anything's possible. So definitely that year was sort of, you could sense through the club and all that. As I said, I'd only been there under 19s the year before, and the under 19s back in those days, they didn't really interact much with the senior players at all. But there was a lot of positivity, and we were starting to build some really great relationships, and you can see how important relationships and culture is by what the Tigers have done over the last 4 years.
And then 89 comes along, and it turns out to be a bit of a bittersweet year. Personally, you had a great season, finishing runner-up in the Jack Dyer medal in your second season, but the team went backwards and won a Wooden Spoon, unfortunately. What happened in your eyes?
Yeah, it's sort of funny when 89. It's sort of because it's so long ago, and but I remember 89 probably a year for me where I probably started to believe that I belonged. I mean, the first year you're really just hanging on. You just obviously I played some reasonable footy in that first year in 88, but you still don't know whether you're good enough. And I think 89, I started to think, like if I don't get happy with myself and I keep the work up, hopefully without any injuries, I can make a career out of this. And I'm not sure what was in the minds of any of the other younger players that were coming through, but it didn't gel like it did in 88. And that's why, a lot of people talk to you about the second year blues and all that. And as I said, without looking at the stats and how players played from 88 to 89, it's hard to sort of recollect what happened, because we were a tight group. We obviously, that we had that good, reasonable year in 88, but that ability to never be comfortable. I always thought when I got to Richmond, and obviously I've been around some pretty successful teams and coached, the Brisbane Lions through the three-peat and all that. But I just think that, maybe we might have thought as a collective, and this is all of us, that maybe it was just going to flow on. It was just going to happen. And any footballer at any level, if you think that you can stand still and just do what you did the year before, it's the old saying that you'll always be overtaken. So maybe looking back that we maybe didn't work hard enough collectively, and that's why I love the game of footy. If you don't do the work, it has an amazing way of biting you on the arse.
And the other, I suppose, big award for you in 1989 was your first State of Origin jumper, which was 1 of 4, mind you, which is a fantastic effort, representing the Big V. As a second-year player, what was that feeling like to get that honour? I mean, we don't get that chance now to see the players running around, but back then that would have been huge.
Oh, it was incredible. I mean, I think I spoke to you early on. I didn't make Teal Cup. I mean, I was a pretty good junior, but I just, back then there was always, is he quick enough? Does he kick it well enough? There was always some slows on me, and be able to get an opportunity to play for your state, like to be able to play with some of the superstars of the competition, and it was against Western Australia, and my mum, I lost my dad after my first year in 88. Actually, he died of an aneurysm. So he was unfortunate. He saw my first year, which I mean, it's if he hadn't saw my first year, it would have been really hard because he lived for one of his boys or both of his boys to play AFL footy. And I'll never forget this proud Carlton person when I think I came fourth in the BNF in the first year. And I've never seen a person more prouder of his boy who'd played league footy and all that. And unfortunately, a month or two later, he passed of an aneurysm. But so my mum was in the crowd, and and I remember sitting on the bench. And we play at the whacker. If you want to play, if the slow's on you that you're a little bit slow coming into AFL footy, if there's one track you don't want to play on, is the whacker. It's the quickest track you've ever seen. And I remember sitting there with Buddha Hocking. I think it was his first state game as well. And you've watched it as a kid since the age of 10, and you're thinking. I used to say state footy was like getting the fast forward on your remote, just pressing fast forward. It was that quick, right? So we're watching it there, and I say to Buddha, I said, mate, look, it's quick, but it doesn't look as quick as what I thought it would be. I said, and he goes, yeah, no, you're right, Lambo. So I get on. I think I got on about the 15-minute mark, and the great Simon Madden, probably one of the greatest ruckmen, if not the greatest ruckman of all times, he just says, Lambo, I want you to get to that spot. Centre bounce, get to that spot. He said, and be ready, because I promise you I'll put it down your throat. So people forget this one, is that like the first touch for Craig Lambert was – the ball wasn't bounced that well, and I thought Simon had no chance of getting it to where I thought I had to be. So I did what he asked, being the rookie. I went to the spot, but my hands weren't raised where you should be, ready to sort of pluck it off hands, because I thought there's no chance. I was ready to sort of take off and spread from the contest. Well, little did I know that Simon got his hand on it, put straight down, hit me straight on the head. So my first touch in state footy was a falcon. If you want to go back to 1989, you'll see the first touch for Craig Lambert state footy for Victoria was a falcon. So but I was lucky enough. I got a goal later on. I got a cheap goal where Flea gave me a pass when he was 30 metres out. That was good. But it was, honestly, to answer the question, to play state footy, honestly, when you've missed out as a junior and you get to play it at top grade, it was insane, really. I just couldn't believe what was happening.
That's fantastic. And so we get to sort of the pre-season of 1990, and basically disaster strikes. Club president Neville Crowe launches the Save Our Skin campaign. Now, rather than us hosts talk about it, can you tell us what it was like to be confronted by that? Because as a 16-year-old supporter and kid, it was horrific that the thought that my team could actually go. What did you know about the club situation at the time? How'd you help off field? Like I know, for example, there's famous footage where the players, I believe, played for no wage at the SCG, for example.
Yep.
So yeah.
No, I sort of like. I really. You remember it vividly because obviously you're thinking, sure, this can't happen. You're thinking every club is secure, and mate, as a kid growing up, you just think VFL, AFL clubs are unbreakable. They're going to be there forever. So when it all, and especially a club of the stature of Richmond Football Club, of what they achieved. But obviously we heard it, we read the news, and we had people talking to us all the time. But I think probably, I'm only 21 at that age, and I still, I was one of those athletes. I was really single-minded in regards to. Some of the most stressful times in my life. The best time I've ever had is probably just being able to play footy, because you can actually just sort of. You can release yourself from all what's going on, and although it was pretty grave, and I imagine if you talk to a lot of Kevin Bartlett and a few of those guys who were around, it was close to that club being extinct. But as a player, I remember being in it, but I remember just saying, well, my only what I can do to help this footy club is play good footy, and I probably as I said, I didn't learn that until a bit later on, until I probably got around someone like a Lee Matthews, who talks about, what your contribution is to the club in regards to how you can make the club better. But it was a testing time, and there's so many Maxi, so you talk about Neville Crowe, and you talk about some of the great Richmond people that sort of stood up for the footy club. And again, the Tiger Army, they are without doubt the greatest supporters of all time, because they were the ones who dug deep. Obviously, our club wasn't going really well at that time. And we've seen it this year, last year with COVID. Without supporters, you don't have a game. So, I feel pretty privileged that obviously the club got through that period now, through 90, started to build a little bit through the mid-90s and all that. and then you see what's happened over the last 4 years. It's a great story. But the one thing you always have is the great Tiger Army. They're always there when you need them.
Absolutely. And so, in spite of all that, we actually drag ourselves off the bottom of the ladder, and we finish 11th with a 7-15 season. So how did you rate your year that year? So you've sort of knuckled down and you've tried to control what you can control.
Yep.
So how did you rate your season and what were your highlights in 1990?
Now, 1990 was just it was a year where it was just an average year for me. Like it was a good year for the club. I mean, I was you never try and look for excuses and all, but I was a massive overtrainer. Whatever the program they told me to do, I'd be doing twice as much. And I remember those first couple of years where obviously, 88, 89. I mean, I remember like we used to have Tuesdays and Thursdays off, and I used to run with a runner called Michael Owen he was our he played for Port. He was our runner at Richmond under 19s, and he's a legend for Port Melbourne, and he was a professional runner. So we would go to Caulfield Racetrack, and we would clock up. No, I'm not lying. We would clock up probably anywhere from 18 to 20 Ks on a Tuesday and a Thursday as extra training, and a third of that would be in the sand track. The inside track where you'd stride for 200 meters, and then you'd sort of do like a light walk, then you'd stride for another 200 meters. And I remember that I reckon 90 was a year where at the end of it I got a double hernia surgery. And everyone talks about OP and all that, but I felt really sluggish in regards to that speed to get out after the ball, that first 5 meters, which is, I mean, I know people said I was slow, but my first 5 was pretty quick. So when I look back on that year, which wasn't good for me, I look back at thinking, no one had ever heard of OP, but just that ability to get out after the footy, the power had gone. So I went and got surgery done, and I felt better in 91.
Yeah, well, so you get to pre-season 91,
yep,
and we're starting to see a new guard start to come through, come into the club. So you got players like Knights,
yep,
Bannick, Campbell, Gale, Free, Nichols, Naish, Barry Young, Stewie Maxfield, guys like that. They're starting to start their careers up. What did you notice about those kids coming through at the time?
Well, I mean, like they just, obviously Knights, Knighter, who's a great mate of mine, Knighter just had great time and space. The real great players have time and space. I mean, Stewie Maxwell, you look at him, he was just a tackling, running machine. Benny Gale was a lot better. I know he's a good player, a very good player, but I think he was underrated. Benny, he could always go into the ruck and all that. We had Tony Free. We had so many players. I think there was some hope for the Richmond supporters that we were starting to get a squad that could possibly sort of, Wayne Campbell's, you could see he was going to be an absolute gun, just the way he moved around the footy field and all that. So I just think that as a Richmond supporter, as a player, you would probably think like, the evidence is there now. We've probably got 8 to 10, anywhere from 18 to 22-year-olds look like they can make the grade. And you still probably had Flea and Michael Pickerings and some of these, guys still playing through their 30s. So it was exciting because, like when you win a game and you play for the Richmond Football Club, I mean, the roar is just insane, especially at the MCG. So, to be able to sort of come through at that time, and obviously I was lucky enough to sort of have a better year than what I did through 90. And then you're forming really good relationships with Knights and Freeze and some of them, and Gale and all that in regards to combinations on where they run, every great side, and you look at it now and over the last 30 years, they've played for a long time together, so they know where people are run. It's like just poetry in motion. I felt 91 we were starting to sort of get that at the club.
Yeah, and I'm gonna talk through a couple of little quick games, but then I'm going to get to one real big game that you're going to talk us through. And it's something that we dined off on for years, right? So season 91, it's arguably your best season for the club. You rack up 31 versus Hawthorn in a round 3 loss, 39 touches versus the Dogs in round 7, and then something happens a week later. Now, for all you young Gen Y Tigers and millennials, etc., this next game is in Richmond folklore. I'm going to set the scene for you. It's round 8, Mother's Day. Yep. Richmond is currently sitting on 1 win, 5 losses up against the reigning Premier, Lee Matthews Collingwood. Now, Craig, talk us through the day you racked up 36 and the great Jeff Hogg slotted 10. That's right, 10 sausage rolls in the Mother's Day massacre.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because actually, I always say it was one of the best. It was one of the best victories I've ever been involved with because of those circumstances. Just like, and before Christmas, they had it on Fox actually, and I've got 3 boys, so I made sure they watched it actually, just to make sure that because they tell me that I couldn't kick and I couldn't do this, and in the modern game, Dad, you wouldn't get a touch. That's what they tell me anyway. So, but it was just I remember it was like it was a game where no one gave us a chance. But again, I suppose I would think, and it'd be great to talk to Flea and some of the older guys. How they felt. I remember David Cloke. I mean, Cloke had a fantastic game that game. And it would be interesting to get their thoughts on whether they actually got confidence because they could see some younger talent coming through that not only had talent, but they had a thirst and an appetite to become great players and make Richmond great again. But I think we were down early in that game, if I remember. We weren't down a lot, but I think we were down by 2 or 3 goals, and then all of a sudden it just clicked, and then our run and our spread and our youth just got a hold of them. And I remember there was, I think there was a play where I think I kicked the Flea. I broke through the middle. I kicked the ball. I saw Flea as on the half forward, and Flea drilled it as he normally did because he never missed. But it was just, I'll never forget running over to the Tiger Army once we won and all that, and just the smiles on their faces beating Collingwood. It was a game that I played 219 games, but it's probably one of 5 that I can remember like it was yesterday, and it was a great day for the club.
That was an awesome day. I tell you, as a supporter, Craig, thank you. That was a seriously ripping day.
Yeah, so we finished 13th that year with 7 and 15. Unfortunately, this saw the demise and a very messy departure of head coach Kevin Bartlett. What was your relationship like with KB, and how did the departure impact you and the playing group?
I had a great relationship with KB. I mean, he gave me everything, really. He gave me an opportunity. He backed me in. I can't thank him enough, to tell you the truth, in regards to, we've spoken about it during the podcast, but, you can have talent, but if you don't have someone who believes in you, there's a lot of players who can fall through the cracks, and KB gave me that confidence, and it was really sad to see him go. I mean, I still have a great relationship with him. I just think I've probably got 5 people, in my life that I can thank for playing league footy, and KB's one of them. And I mean, it shook. I have no doubt it would have shaken a lot of the younger guys, because KB was really adamant that if you had a crack, if you did the work, obviously you had to be able to play well on the weekends. You had to have the talent, but if you did the work, and he could put up with a few mistakes and all that if you're having a crack. And so he gave a lot of us young guys an opportunity to grow where, in other teams that probably were winning more, we would have to play more reserves footy. And we knew that. So that was tough on a personal note for me. And it got really, and the way it just got really messy with, you had administrators wanted to try and play, and you had players who wanted to administrate, and you see it most years with some club where they lose everything, where a legend of the club is gone. Where really you've just got to stick to what you do best, and as a playing group, what we had to do is play our part, and as an administration group, we had to sort of trust the administration group to, obviously you're letting go a legend of our football club, and they're in charge to do that. Do you know what I mean? And I can have my view to say I don't think it was the right move because of my relationship with KB. But I think where the two entities, where the playing group and the administration started to try and tell people how to do their jobs, that's when clubs can get into trouble. And I think that's what happened when KB left.
And then in 92, new coach Alan Jeans jumps on board. What was the difference in pre-season like, and what were your expectations?
Well, pre-season was sort of like, I think with pre-season we did a lot more longer running with Yabby. Jeans, he was a bit different. He was sort of like he's quite intimidating. Yabby. He said, I didn't have a good year under. I think that was 92, was it? I sort of
92. Yeah.
Obviously, it's sort of funny. Like he come from Hawthorn, what he did in the game was astonishing. I mean, one of the greatest coaches of all times. And he just, I remember that year for myself personally, he wanted me to play more like John Platten. So I had to run, 40 metres to receive handballs and all that. And that was right in the period when Flea was coming to the end, and I was copping the hardest tag every week. And I used to sort of say to Yabby respectfully, I said, like, I don't mean to be rude, Yab, but I mean I've got a guy hanging off me. I'm not blistering speed. I don't know how I can play like Johnny Platten where I run 40 metres and receive a handball and all that. I mean, my greatest strength is around the contest to be able to win the ball, and that didn't go down too well. Talking to a legendary coach in regards to my thoughts on how I get the best out of me. So that year for me was a tough year. Tough year because I was trying to learn a different style of playing. Obviously, to have Yabby there, I mean, it was exciting because in a way, what he did at Hawthorn was exceptional and all that. But I had the same thing where you had to let go of a guy of Kevin Bartlett's statue of the footy club, who literally, I believe, without him and a Doug Searle, I probably don't get my chance. So it was a year where I didn't play as well as what I would like. I didn't handle it as well as what I would like. I probably handled it probably a little bit immature in regards to, as you get a bit older, you learn to sort of be able to compartmentalise a little bit better. But that's what I remember of that year.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say you had a down year, but you still racked up some big numbers, actually. So you still racked up 39 versus Melbourne in round 4, 31 versus Adelaide in 5, 34 versus the Saints in 14, and 28 in round 21 versus West Coast Eagles. And you still, I think you still had you got state selection that year as well. So you still had a pretty good year, Craig. I think you've been a bit hard on yourself there.
I think the funny thing, we get back to state footy, and I should recognise the the hardest thing of state footy is making it. I mean, once you've made it and you've gone okay, it's sort of you can have a good year without having a great year, and you can still get selected. And I remember obviously I'd won the BNF in 91, and 92. You're sort of trying to build on that. And as I said, Yabby Jean speaks for itself, legend of the game. I don't know 5, 6 premierships and all that. But I remember it was I still was able to play some good footy. But I suppose when you're sort of playing state football and you've got your own expectations, I didn't live up to my expectations. And looking back, as I got through probably a little bit older, through my mid-20s, 25, 26, 27, you learn to be able to deal with, if there's a negative comment from a coach and all that, you learn to be able to deal with it a lot better than probably what you do at 22, 23.
Yep.
Yeah.
So basically saying the state team was like the Australian cricket team, mate. Once you're in, it's harder to get out than get in.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
So we get to 93, and Alan Jean steps down due to health problems, and the great John Noilty, a great Richmond Tiger man, comes to Tigerland. And the other notable signing to Richmond is a young colt named Matthew Richardson.
Yep.
What were your first impressions of Swooper? And how were you starting to feel about the revolving door of coaches? Because you're now up to your third coach in 6 years.
Yeah, well, I mean, Swooper was a really sort of personable guy. He was sort of it was all about us against the rest. He really sort of built that camaraderie. And, obviously he was at Melbourne and had success there. And so, it was, you are starting to ask yourself, geez, this is happening too much. In the start of 93, I think we touched on this before the podcast started. I actually got approached from Kevin Sheedy. He rang me up in end of 92. He rang me up and I nearly told him where to go because I didn't think it was Sheeds, actually. I thought it was one of my mates taking the piss from Dan and on. And it was Sheeds, and we hooked up at the Melbourne Inn, that hotel on the corner there when you turn left to go to the airport.
Yep.
Melbourne Inn Hotel, and we caught up there with Roger Hampson, I think was the GM, and Sheeds, and I remember Sheeds, he had his little clipboard, and he had the 93 team on it, and he had, I think they were all in black, his team, and he had me as ruck rover, and he turns to me and he goes, I like the look of that team, Lambo. And I remember what I was getting paid back then with the Tigers, and obviously I played state footy, and I'd won a BNF and all that, and I remember Sheeds offered me twice the amount that I was getting paid at Richmond to leave for the start of '93 season. I went home, spoke to my mum, spoke to my brother, spoke to my fiance, my wife now, Melissa, and I armed and ahed, and I just thought, you know what, I'll go back to the club and I'll try and get myself an extra 15, 20 grand, even though that was 20 less than what Essendon had actually offered. And but I don't want to leave this group of guys. I really don't. I just we've formed a pretty good bond. It hasn't been ultra successful. We hadn't played finals yet, but I just felt an obligation. The club had given me an opportunity, and so I rang Sheeds up and said, mate, listen, I'd love to go. I'd love to come, but I started something with Richmond. They gave me an opportunity, and I really want to stick with them. And he said, no worries, Lambo. I respect loyalty. And funny story, we were playing Essendon, I don't know, around 8 or 9. And that was when the two change rooms were together back in the old days. You know, it used to be the MCG. You sort of had to walk out side by side. Remember those old days?
Yeah.
And half time we're walking out of the reserves, and I didn't know that Sheeds was walking out right next to me. And he's talking to himself, he's talking to me, and he said, you know, hey, Lambo, you don't have to worry about me getting you that extra 20, 30,000. Don't worry about me getting that extra 30. That's okay. But we're going to tag you today, right? And I'm going to keep you under 15. And, mate, literally for the next 6 years, Kevin Sheedy, didn't matter if they were 100 points up, he used to always tag me. He'd have Gary O'Donnell, he'd have Ezard, he'd have like Danaher's, mate. I just get Shawnee Denham's. I mean, I said, mate, they're 100 points up once, and I think I said to Shawnee, Shawnee, mate, there's 5 minutes to play, 100 points up. He goes, Lambo, if you get a touch, I won't play next week. So with Sheeds, he did take it personally.
That's harsh.
And I don't know where you can tell me where we finished in '93. Well, I know Essendon won it. I know that.
Well, I can tell you. So 1993 is a down year for the club.
Right.
It finished second last on the ladder with 4 wins and 16 losses. But this actually turns out to be your final season at the club. Yep. In your words, what happened? Because from a supporter standpoint, like, your loss still rankles me to this day. Actually, if I'm honest, it's actually you and Stuart Maxfield. And there's a lot of Tigers of my vintage.
Yep.
They're the 2 losses of players that really, really still irk us to this very day. But I'll let you expand on what happened at the end of 1993.
Well, end of 1993, I said, it wasn't a good year for me. It wasn't a good year for the club. And, I mean, obviously that was when I was starting to sort of, trades were starting to pop up. So you sort of, I remember someone from Fitzroy had rang me up. I'm not sure, might have been October or November, and said, listen, Richmond are trying to trade you to us. Would you come to Fitzroy? And I didn't believe it. I didn't think after, one bad year that I'd be offloaded. So I just hung up on the guy. Actually, it was a head recruiter. I can't remember what his name is. And then he rang up again and said, "Listen, I can confirm now that you're a part of a trade. You're a part of the Jeff Hogg trade." And I said, "Listen, mate, I don't want to talk to you. I want to ring up my club and talk to the appropriate people." So I remember ringing up. I think Swooper. He was overseas. He's either doing a study trip. I'm not sure. He wasn't there. So I got a hold of Cameron Swab, who was their CEO, and I said, Cam, mate, I'm hearing that the club's trying to trade me to Fitzroy. Surely this is not accurate. And he said, would you be interested in a trade? And I can't, not on this podcast, I probably can't say what I said to him, but it wasn't too flash. I sort of felt like, I really felt betrayed in a way. I just felt like, even if you wanted to trade me, at least come and talk to me first. I've had Lee Matthews, who I rate as one of my great mentors and all that, who wound me up in 2000. But he had the courage to tell me, I was contracted for 2001 when they won the premiership. But he had the courage to actually come and talk to me, say, listen, mate, we won't cut you next year. You've done too much for the club, but I think you can be better for us in a coaching capacity. So I was just a little bit disappointed that I'd heard it a couple of times from Fitzroy people, and then I had that sort of call with Cameron, and I said it's nothing against Cameron and the club. I mean, these trades go on all the time. It just I just felt like I was really disappointed that I thought that I'd given my heart and soul. I had a chance to go to Essendon the year before on double the money, And then before you knew it, that was, when obviously Brodders came to the club, and that was a part of the Brodders trade, and Brodders was a terrific pickup for the footy club, and one of the best blokes I've met in footy, actually. But so I'm there thinking, what am I going to do? The trust is gone. I said, well, I'm not going back to Richmond now. But I'll tell you one thing, I'm not going to Fitzroy. I'll make sure that this deal falls through. Right? So then I get a call from Dennis Pagan, and he says, we want you at North Melbourne. And I said, mate, I want to come to North Melbourne. He said, the only problem we've got is we've finished 6th, so we've got about the 12th pick in the draft, and there's going to be a few that probably want to get you before us. So that was when, I don't know what you probably can remember, was when I put that real big figure on my head.
Yep.
To try and which I think, Lukey Ball I think did it with the Pies one year. So I was really desperate to stay in Melbourne. I was flattered a little bit. Dennis Pagan, North Melbourne. I always admired the way they went about their footy and all that, tough and all that, to get a crack with North. So the only way that I get to North, I remember sitting with Kerry Good, Smokey Dawson, all the power brokers, all the power brokers here, and thinking, how on earth am I going to try and how do I get to North Melbourne? Because I just got engaged, so I wanted to stay in Melbourne. Family's here, and then so back then, as you remember, they didn't have the national draft, then the preseason draft. The preseason draft was in March, so they have the normal draft in November. And then the preseason draft was in March, 3 weeks before, or 2 weeks before round 1. So I remember they're saying the only way we can get you is we've got to put like a real big figure on your head, a lot more than what you're getting now, and then no one will probably pick you up, and you can slide through to us. And I said, yeah, well, whatever you think will work, and obviously they spread it over a few years, obviously, which makes up the difference. So I remember thinking, well, I want to go to North, and they were the first ones to grab me. I had Sydney after that. Sydney, the great Ron Joseph, he was the GM. He flew my wife Mel and I to Sydney for a week and wined and dined us. And Ron Barassi was a coach, and Ron called me Chris Lambert the first time he met me. So I'm thinking, well, he hasn't done his research too much, Ronnie, but that's okay. He's Ron Barassi; he can do what he wants. And again, they had a priority pick. So I could have gone them. If I had known what was going to happen in March with me going to Brisbane, I could have gone to Sydney and St Kilda. So St Kilda had a priority pick as well. So St Kilda rang me as well. But because I'm really loyal, that once I commit to, once North rang me up and said, we want to get you, we think we can get you, we put enough on your head, I said, well, if you think you can do that, I'll stay the course. So I'm training. I said, one of my greatest influences of all time is Ray Giles, the boxing coach. I trained with him from when I was the age of 20 to I was probably 31 or 32. So I did all my training with Ray, and I am a highly stressful sort of player, and anxiety was always a part of me as a footy player. I'm not, I'm pretty open about it. Sort of, the anxiety always sort of partly drove you, but sort of sometimes sort of paralysed me as well. So as it was getting closer and closer to the draft, a March draft, so North are just adamant that I'll just slide through to their pick, right? And I've got Ronnie Joseph ringing me up saying, "Hey Lambert, we know what you want to do, right? We've got pick 4. We're going to take you." And I said, "Ronnie, you don't have to abuse me, mate. If you got pick 4, well, you've got to pick before North Melbourne. You can just pick me then." So it became this thing, and then I wouldn't take any calls, and it was quite stressful actually. And then one of the funniest stories, about 4 days before the draft, it's sort of like I get a call from Wayne Carey, right? And again, I'm thinking, Wayne Carey's not going to ring me. And he goes, "Lambo, it's Wayne Carey, mate. Mate, hoping everything goes well. I think the draft was on a Tuesday or something like that. I hope it goes well. We can get you to the club." And I said, "Excuse my language, you good on your fuckwit. Who's this?" I actually dead set thought again it was one of my mates playing a gag on me, and it was dark, right? And so I had to apologise to Dark, saying, "Mate, I've had blokes ringing me up saying they're Anthony Stevens, they're Glenn Archer, they're Darren Crocker." I said, "So I apologise, mate." So I played. So I've got to the day of the draft, and I'm having a sandwich with another Richmond player, one of my great mates, Barry Young. on Bridge Road. I'm having a sandwich because it was on the radio back then, guys. So paint the picture here, right? I haven't heard from Brisbane the whole 4 months. Brisbane have not made contact with me. So the last club I think that's going to pick me up is Brisbane. So I'm there and sitting in the cafe with Baz, and Baz is hoping to get to Essendon. So they say Barry Young's gone to Essendon. He's high-fiving himself like he used to do. And then they said, well, there's been a big shock in the March draft. And they said, and they went through all the drafts. They said, oh, Craig Lambert's going to Brisbane Bears, going up north. So I'd only heard the north because I was paralysed, right? And Barry Young said, Lambo, mate, you know you're going to the Bears, don't you? And I said, I couldn't talk. Literally, I had my sandwich, dropped my sandwich. I get a call from my manager back then, and he says, listen, there's going to be a press crew coming to the cafe in the next 5 minutes. Now, mate, I know it's not what we expected, but I just want you to be positive about the move to Brisbane. And I said, okay. So let me just lay this down for you. I'm fair skin, right? I wear a long sleeve jumper. It's averages 34 degrees heat in Brisbane, right? And you're asking me to be positive about going to Brisbane, and they're on the bottom of the ladder. I said, mate, how on earth can I be positive? He said, Lambo, it's a national competition. You got to be positive. I remember and then I got a call from my wife, who was my fiance back then. She was in tears. She was howling. Oh, we can't go to Brisbane. What's going on? And it was just it was mayhem, right? And I'm thinking, and then all of a sudden, before you know it, press is there, and you say what you got to say, and it's a national competition, and I'm excited. There's a lot of good young talent at Brisbane, and you get up there, and 2 weeks later, you're actually playing, and you're on this big figure. This big figure that you try to scare everyone off with. So you got players in the locker room that are filthy that you're there because I was getting over the odds. But and that's the history of me getting to Brisbane Bears. And as I said, like if it hadn't been from Richmond trying to trade me, and they had every right to trade me, and the trade still went through. So it was a really good trade for Richmond because they got Brodders, who was a star.
Well, they got Brodders, Gale, Dundas.
I don't know. Was it Galen? Was Butch in that one? I'm not sure. But
I thought we got three. I thought we got three.
You know what? It was Elliot Dundas. But it was a great trade for the club. And it said it said looking back on it just for me to actually go through that whole, like you imagine these days you just have to wait. What you do the national draft and the preseason draft on the next day. But it was an exhausting 3 months. And so I just when I meet Richmond people, and the greatest years were the Richmond times where you were growing with that younger group, and these things happen in life where if someone tries to trade you, well then you've got the choice to say, do I want to stay or do I want to go and all that, and in the end I chose to leave because the club were doing everything to try and get me to Fitzroy. So for all the viewers out there, all the Tiger listeners and that. I promise you, hand on heart, I never had an intention to leave the Tigers. These things happen. I ended up at Brisbane. If we want to talk about sliding doors, I just said to you before, I love people when they say they're unlucky about premierships. I say, well, in 93, I had a handshake from Kevin Shee that he wanted me to go to the Bombers, and I said no. And then in 93, the Tigers wanted to get rid of me, and I was a lock to go to North Melbourne. They won at 96 and 99, right? And then I end up at Brisbane Bears and play 7 years, and I think I play some pretty good footy there and help Voss, Black, Lappins and all those guys. And then Lee Matthews retires me at 2000 and they win 3 in a row.
Oh, Jesus.
Football is a very cruel mistress.
So no one can say they're unlucky. I wish I can. When people say they're unlucky, I think you just, as I said, even, and we'll probably get to it with Brisbane, but I mean, I'm more proud that when you see people, and I'm getting to an age now where you get a bit older, where people every now and then might say, I love the way you went about your footy, and that means more than me than hanging on for another year and maybe getting a grand final where you probably don't even deserve it. So I've never really sort of felt like I was unlucky. That's what happened in my journey.
That was just your path.
That was my path. And that's it. So.
Fast forward 25 years, 2018, you were back on the MCG versus North Melbourne as the homecoming hero for the Tigers. What was that like to be back in front of the Tiger Army and slotting another goal, albeit from the goal line? But it's a goal nonetheless.
Well, it was. I mean, it's a great initiative by Richmond, isn't it? Like, it just shows the class of the footy club. I mean, I'm great mates with Brendan Gale. He's a star of a person, star of administrator. Peggy, Barmy, what that club's done over the last probably 5 years has been extraordinary. But it was just brilliant to go back. My whole family came back, and to go out there and just feel the love from the Tiger Army. I think it was about 25 metres out, to tell you the truth, and I'd had 3 schooners before it, and I was in dress shoes.
I was going to say, you would have had dress shoes on, yeah.
I had dress shoes on, and I actually hit it okay. I was really surprised. I silly blokes like Hogg and Butch Gale and all those blokes saying, "Don't you be a weak prick, Lambert. I want you to go out to the 50-metre line, and I want you to have a crack at 50." I said, "Mate, I couldn't kick 50 when I was 22. How am I going to do it now at 50?" I mean, so I took the conservative, and I think I drew it from about 20-25, and my great mate Lepper came over and gave me a hug. But it was I just think those sort of things, they hopefully the supporters get something out of it, because so do we. I mean, I haven't played league footy for 30 years now, and I still remember the first game I ever played for the Tigers in '88 against Melbourne, and the warmth and the love that the Tiger Army have always shown me. So it gives us a kick as well.
Speaking of first games, you obviously presented the jumper to Sydney Stack for his first game against the Giants. What was that like, being a part of that kind of ceremony?
Well, it was interesting, because I got the call from Timmy Livingston, who does a great job with the Tigers as well, and I played with Timmy at the Tigers, and obviously, once you get that honour of actually presenting a jumper, you sort of all the emotions go back to probably when you first played your first game, which you probably don't. You you take it a bit for granted as you get a bit older. That first time you ever pull the jumper on, and so you obviously got to do a bit of research on the kid. And I was really intrigued with Sydney's journey and how we got to the Tigers. And obviously he's had a bit of troubles and all that, but hopefully he can learn from those. And because the kid's got a heap of talent, and he's at the right club who can sort of probably, he's had a couple of chances now, so he probably hasn't got too many more chances, but the club will stick by him. But to go there, and I've always had a great affiliation with all the Indigenous players. I was probably fortunate. I spoke before about a guy that our daughter's godparents are the McLeans. Magic and Linda McLean, and Magic really showed me. I've always had a lot of respect and love for. I'm a carer, but he really sort of educated me a little bit on just the culture of the Indigenous, and so I've always had a really good affiliation with all Indigenous players that I've been involved with. So the journey of Sydney was incredible. But when you're walking into these rooms and colours, and all of a sudden I started to choke up and get a bit emotional, because you sort of, it'd been how long? It's been so long, 25 years since I'd been in a Richmond rooms before. And you're presenting this jumper to a kid who's just got those killer eyes that hopefully I had back in 1988, where you just sort of you do anything to play for the Richmond Football Club, and it was really emotional. Obviously Sydney's family was there. Sydney's manager was Paul Pierce, who's an ex-teammate of mine for Brisbane Bears. So I feel really lucky that I get a chance to give him the jumper. He actually kicked the first goal. He played a really good game, actually, and I think Koch hurt his hamstring in the third quarter when the game was in the balance, and I think the Giants just got on top and won it by about 3 or 4 goals. But it was just brilliant. I just think all that stuff where you can sort of go back and actually, it's not War and Peace. It's not about my journey. It was about, a little bit about what it meant to me, but just, what tradition and what culture Richmond is. I think I said it in the speech, and this is going back last year, around 5, 6, whenever it was. I just said, the Richmond Football Club over the last 4 years are the envy of every club, because what they have is that unbelievable care for each other and culture. And while they have that, they're going to be really hard to be knocked off, because I've been around some talented groups, and I said before, I was really lucky enough to be around Brisbane Lions, and they had that. They had the talent, and they had this beautiful feeling and caring for each other. And when you walk into a room and they have that, you can sense it. And I remember sensing it when I was lucky enough to present Sydney with his first jumper.
And that kind of leads into my last question for you, that obviously a long time between drinks with premierships for us up until 2017. What's your take on how our current success has come about? Is it all based on that culture?
I think it's recruiting. I think it's recruiting culture. I think it's like leadership. It's I mean, if I could sort of, if I mean, I told you before that I actually, that era with if you look at Brisbane Lions era, it started with the Brisbane Bears. Robert Walsh was a fantastic mentor of mine, and I know a lot of people. If you talk to Nigel Lappins and Michael Vosses, and they'll speak in glowing terms of Robbie. He was tough and he was hard, but he started the process of those young guys actually training hard. Professionalism. He's very good tactically, and if you track back Richmond, I mean, their last 4 years have been astonishing. But it's probably been like an 8-9 year journey when you look at some of these kids like Edwards we spoke about before, and Dusties and Koch. It's been a journey of them actually going through some tough years, obviously having the right people around them, and sometimes you can be doing everything right and things just don't click, But if you can stay together long enough, and then you look at their recruiting, over the years where they've just been able to recruit the right types. Their coaching, the way they play a system base, in regards to their team defence is extraordinary. And then all of a sudden you tap into that, the real class, Dusty Martin, freak of nature, we know that. But, then they start to build this incredible culture and care. And I remember you guys, as I said, my memory is not as good as you're younger than me, you lads, but there was a game at the MCG where one of the opposition players got knocked out, I think, or got hurt. And I reckon every Richmond player, and they got him on a cart. And I remember, this is probably 3 years ago, every Richmond player went over.
It was Reece Conker. It was Conker, and he did his ankle. It was Buddy Franklin. Franklin took him down in a tackle.
That was it. And I just thought, and it wasn't scripted. It just was automatic. And I thought, if you could bottle that sort of, that culture or soul or whatever of a club, that's what everyone's searching for, and Richmond have it at the moment, and that's a credit to Peggy, Brendan, Barmy, Demmer, all the coaches and all that. It's just Timmy Livingston, you just name it. They've got a special group at the moment, but you've got to be really protective of that, because if all of a sudden you think that it's just going to go on, which I'm sure Richmond don't, you can lose that pretty quickly. So it's I have no doubt this year that everyone will probably say Richmond are getting older, and probably there's going to be another flag favourite and all that. But if they keep that spirit, that Tiger spirit, and they have a little bit of luck with injuries, they'll be pretty hard to beat again, I can tell you that.
As Tommy Hafey says, mate, you got to watch out for that wounded tiger. It'll come out and get you when you least expect it.
100%. Jack Dyer once. Yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah, it's actually funny. The one thing we didn't talk about was Jack Dyer's famous speech in the Jack Dyer stand for Save Our Skins campaign. But for you young'uns, it's on YouTube. Highly recommended. Fantastic viewing. The passion that come from Jack Dyer that day.
Yeah, he spoke to us probably, I think it was 88, 89. It was incredible. I couldn't take my eyes off him. Actually, he's such an intimidating person, and extraordinary when you look back on your career and you think Jack Dyer and Kevin Bartlett's and Dale Waitmans and Jimmy Jess and Michael Roaches and all that. You got to pinch yourself sometimes. It's sort of like it's such a historic club. And I was lucky enough to play 123 games. I will go into, if you don't mind, lads, how I got to number 4. Do you want to know that, or?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Because it is
because you said you were 53 for only 7 games.
Well, you might have to do your research, and I'm pretty sure it was 7-8 games, and it's a funny story because obviously number 4 is quite an iconic jumper, especially now with what Dusty's doing, but with Royce and Jeff Rains and obviously Matty Rogers and all that. So, but I. Back in the old days, as we've spoken about, I used to wear a long sleeve, right? And back when clubs didn't have big budgets, they only used to have from number 1 to number 6 in long sleeves in the training jerseys, right?
Oh, there you go.
So in '88, I obviously wore number 4 for the whole pre-season, right? So all pre-season, punt road, getting smashed, training with KB, and Mark Wally Eustace wore number 4. So So I've started my first 3-4 games, 5 games. I'm in 53, and I'm tracking okay, and I'm sure it's about round 7, I think it is, right? And I become really close with Flea Waitman, who's, as I've spoke about, just a legend, in regards to how he helped my footy and made me feel like I belong. But I remember walking in one afternoon after I'd been doing my plumbing, I think, and I go straight to Dusty's room, and I get me number 4. And Flea, cheeky Flea goes, "Fuck, Lambo, you're not bad, are you?" I said, well, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Geez, you've jumped into Wally Eustace's grave pretty quick, haven't you?" And I said, well, "What do you want about?" He goes, "Well, Wally Eustace got the flick. They've actually gave him the arse." I've gone, "No way." He said, "I'm telling you, Lambo, they've given him over the arse." He goes, "You should go up to Swabby or go up to the coaches and see whether you can get number 4. So here I am, like a tragic Carlton supporter, right? Know a little bit about the Richmond history, not a lot, right? So then the next day I'm thinking, well, 53. I mean, it's a heavy number. I mean, I would have been happy with anything in the 30s, right? And then I said, well, I'll chance my luck, and I'll go up to KB and Cameron Swab, and I'll say, "Is there any chance I can get number 4? I've heard Wally's been given the flick and all that." And they said, the importance of number 4, Craig? And I said, well, I know Jeff Rains, because I couldn't read the locker, Jeff Rains, and obviously the great Royce Hart. They said, well, we want you to understand more of the history of this jumper because before we give it to you. So then we had a meeting the following day, and I had to do a bit of research on the history of the jumper and all that. And that's why I love the club, because, they're not just going to give me number 4 because it's a pretty important jumper for the footy club. And I answered all the questions correctly, I believe. And in the end, they said, "Lambo, you've got number 4." And that's how I got the number 4, guys.
That's amazing. So you're telling me all those number 12s they're not all David Asprey fans? All those number 12s out there right now?
Oh, probably. Have you had Richo on here before?
Yeah, I have. You've had Richo.
Yep. Yeah, he's like Richo. You said to me before. I remember Matty Richardson's one of the talk about a nice human being, but a superstar. But we used to run the tan. Excuse me. We used to run the tan. We used to do our time trials. As you know, the Tigers always do the time trial of tan, and it used to be like for about 3 years. It used to be like out of myself, Knights, and Brian Lees, 3 of us. Sort of we'd all be around the same mark, right? And then remember we had this. What year did Richo come?
He was 90. He was pre-season 93.
93, right? So we'd done our time trial, and Nida and I had won it together. And I can't remember. I think we ran it like a 13 flat. I think it was like that. So pretty time. And then we see this young 6'6" rooster walking over with one of our other head trainers, and they introduced Matty Richardson and Richo and Lambo and all that. He ran it by himself with the trainer, and he ran a 12.50, so he beat us by about 14 seconds.
Well, you don't want big blokes rolling you. You never want that.
Mate, I'm thinking, mate, and like the best guy, like you want to talk about, and Richo, he kicks so many goals. And a funny story, when I first played at Brisbane, we played against the Tigers, and I love Richo because he just, as I said, like he's got a harder goal. People who sort of, there's some people just don't get him. They said because he used to get the shits up and all that he was selfish. He just was more pissed off on himself. I don't think I've met a better person in footy than Matthew Richardson. But I remember he had a shot third quarter, it would have been 94, and at the Gabba, and he's about 25 out on a slight angle. Right? I remember they're sledging on the side there, and I said, "Richo," I said, "Mate, you were filthy when I left the club." He goes, "Why is that, Lambo?" I said, "Now you're the worst fucking shot for goal from 25 metres out." And he sprayed, and he goes, "Fuck off, Lambo."
That's fantastic. Yeah. Now, to finish this interview off, I'm just going to fire some quick fire questions at you. Just 4 of them.
Yep.
So I want to know, who was the best player you played with at Richmond?
Dale Waitman.
Who was the best player you played with at Brisbane?
Michael Voss.
The best opponent you ever played against at Richmond?
Best opponent I ever played against would have been Greg Williams.
Yep. Oh yeah, there's a name. That's a good call. And what about when you're at the Lions? Did anyone take over from Diesel?
Who to play against the Lions? Who was probably the best. There's the best and there's the hardest in there. The best I played against probably. No, without doubt, Robert Harvey. Yeah, Robert Harvey. Yeah, I played on him once. Thank God. I used to play on Berkey a fair bit, which was okay. But once I had to play in halves, Berkey was crook or something at Waverley. Mate, I've never ran so much in my life. He ran me up and down the ground. His hair doesn't move; it makes you sick. And he's a really nice bloke too. So you can't try and whack him. I'm thinking, can we just get this game over and done with? Halves was the best. Yeah,
that was a big wide ground too, Waverley. The wings were really wide out there too. So if you had someone who could run, horrific.
My God, mate, it was the hardest 2 hours of my life.
Your best win at Richmond, which one did you rate?
The Mother's Day Massacre was the best. It was just the crowd. It was eerie, the feeling actually, because it was sort of the script wasn't meant for us to win, and as we were down, Hoggy kicking 10, which was pretty insane. It still is to be able to kick 10 goals. So I think the Mother's Day Massacre was just an incredible win.
Beautiful. And the final one, and I imagine this would go over your days at Richmond and Brisbane.
Yep.
Who was your most hated team? Who'd you really like? You just wanted to beat them every time. I know you want to beat every team, but who was that one particular team that we just got to beat these guys?
Who do I hate? Well, I hated Essendon for a long time, even though I loved them as a footy club, because I mean, for some reason, Sheedy just tagged me every single week. He just took a liking just tagging me every single week. So, yeah, but, I mean, the one team who do I hate? I had an ongoing running battle with Liam Pickering, who I'm mates with now, Pickers, because Pickers was a bit of a chirper. Do you know what I mean? Like, Pickers used to always... So Pickers played for North for a couple of years, and he played for Geelong.
Yep.
So I used to look at whatever team he was playing for, and I didn't really like them too much, because he used to say some things on the field. But as back then, he used to just chirp all the time. But I'm trying to think, is there a club that I really I shouldn't say despise. That's the bad word.
Yeah.
Which club didn't I like playing against?
Well, can I reword it? Which club did you feel you had the best rivalry with? I'll make it more PC.
No. I'm just trying to, because it was sort of like you probably go back to the clubs where you probably struggled against, really. So, but which club did I dislike the most? That's a curly one. That one, it's I've never been asked that one before. I've been asked who was my toughest opponent, all that sort of stuff. But I will say who was the probably the worst team I disliked playing against was St Kilda when you had to play them at Moorabbin.
Oh yeah, they used to. You say they had Burns, they had Joffa, and they used to water the Moorabbin, didn't they? They used to water
it. Mate, it was, and I like St Kilda as a footy club. Don't get me wrong, but it was. I only played there, I think, 2 years. It was the most frightening experience when you had Jeff Burns and Cunningham's and all these tough lunatics, right? And I've met those guys, and they're really good guys. But on that field back in the late 80s. I tell you what, it was scary to play St Kilda at Moorabbin. It was more scary to play there, I found, than playing at Victoria Park.
And they had that. What was their group of supporters called? They had it was the animal cage, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was. I'm telling you, man. I'd like to think I was relatively brave on a footy field. Man, I used to be terrified playing at Moorabbin. I mean, like, you're thinking, like, I could get killed here, and I come through as a 16-year-old in the VFA. So they're already. So that tells you how crazy it was.
Well, that's the thing. Is back then it was still suburban warfare, wasn't it? It still had that.
Mate, I mean, it was just like. Now you bring back memories that I don't want to remember. It's like you're with men that are just tough, and if you try to pick the ball up, there was no kicking in danger. they just kick your head off. Like, and you think to yourself, man, I literally could get killed here. But I mean, it's sort of, you had to grow up quick, and as I said, like, I mean, all those. The good thing about back then, it was like, once you finish the game, you'd always go back, and there'd be an aftermatch where you could have a drink with the the opposition players and the umpires had come in, which was really nice because, I mean, I used to sometimes probably say the wrong things, and umpires get a little bit frustrated, guys, as you do. But back then, you could actually apologise to them and say, mate, I didn't mean nothing by it. I was getting tagged. I thought you weren't giving me much and all that. And these days, it'd be nothing better. I don't think it could happen because they're going to go back and review games. It's a lot more sort of professional. But it was really good to interact with the umpires after the game. And I'd always, if I said the wrong thing to them, I'd always apologise and say, listen, mate, I didn't mean nothing by it. They said, no, all cool, Lambo.
I still spend my Saturday afternoons now at cricket apologising to umpires. So I can still relate to that.
Yeah, it's a change game now, isn't it? I suppose it's the evolution, but it is. I still think that that after-match thing which it can't be done now. I mean, I know that, but it was such a. I suppose as a younger player, I remember through the Richmond days, and I did it at Victoria Park. And I remember talking to Dakes and all that after. I think we got beat by about 5 goals, 6 goals, and all that. And here's Dakes having a beer with you, and I'm just thinking, I know we've been beaten by 5 goals, but you're just talking as athletes, you know what I mean? And obviously. Yeah. And these days, it's a bit more sanitised and all that, and it's still a great product. I think the AFL do an amazing job. I think how they got through COVID was extraordinary, and you really got to take your hat off to the AFL in regards to, they are the envy of all competitions, aren't they? The way they run it. So let's just hope that the Tigers can do the three-peat this year, and I think everyone will be happy.
I need to build a bigger house, mate. I'll get that much merchandise. It's crazy. I've got to have to go to the bank and take out an overdraft. But Craig, look, I was really, really excited when you agreed to come onto the program tonight. And sincerely, we thank you for the opportunity for chatting with us tonight. We'd like to wish you all the best for the future. And on behalf of the Tiger Army, thank you so much for your time tonight.
No, it's been a pleasure, guys. And as I said, I'll start to listen to the podcast now, actually. I'm getting into the podcast. I'm sort of at that age now where I'd rather sort of listen to podcasts. I'm not a big reader. As I said before, it was a pleasure reminiscing in regards to taking me back all those years. And as I said before, I feel fairly privileged to have worn the Richmond jersey for 123 games and really proud of being obviously a past Jack Dye medalist, but on what the club's doing, what they've done the last 4 years, and it'd be pretty magic if they could win. If they could win this year, they really put themselves up there as probably one of the great sides of all time. If not, what's that? 4 out of 5 years, you're probably talking in the top 3 sides of all time.
A different conversation again, isn't it?
A different conversation, absolutely. And is it true that Dusty won the time trial, or is that just? I was on Twitter today, and they said that Dusty won the time trial.
He did, but we don't. The thing we're not sure about is if it was done in groups or if it was an overall team thing. But apparently, the group he was in was with your Prestia, Vlastuin, Koch. So I think he was running with the mids. So that's a bit of a warning shot to the rest of the comp if Dusty's winning a time trial.
Well, yeah, the crazy thing about I'm here in New South Wales now, right? And I've got all my mates are tragic rugby league people, all barrack for West Tigers or Canterbury and all that, and we're watching the grand final. We got this pub we go to, the Palace Hotel. It's a great pub owned by Billy Young and an ex-Wallaby, 46 tests, and a good mate of mine. And you wouldn't believe it. Every Saturday we sort of go up there and we take $100 and we have a few bets on the racehorses and all that. And I've got $20 left. Right, the grand final's about to start, and all these rugby league blokes are going to be. What do you reckon tonight, Lambo? And obviously, I'm not involved in football anymore. So if I wanted to bet on footy, I could, but I never have bet on footy. I don't really enjoy it. I'll have a bet on the racehorses and all that every now and then. And I said, Richmond will win. And I said, Dusty Martin's going for 3 norms in a row, which has never been done. I said, but if anyone could do it, it's this bloke. This bloke's a freak of nature, right? So then I looked at the odds, and I think Dusty was paying $6.50. And him and Dangerfield, I think, and I know the Tigers might have been $1.80 or something like that. So I think it was about a $12 multi, right? So I didn't do nothing, right? But so all my mates who they love the punt, right? So they're all mid-50s and all that. So as the game evolved, and that third quarter when Dusty started to come to life and all that, and you could sense that maybe Dusty could win his 3rd norm. Well, it gets in the last quarter, right? So it gets in the last, and literally there's 100 people, and 90 of them are all rugby league, and there's 10 of us that are all AFL, right? And when he kicked that last goal, and they all knew he was going to win the Norm, they just erupted. So every one of them have put a multi on Dusty and Richmond to win. And my last $20, right, I've had 2 bets at Launceston, and they've come last, both of them. So that's why I don't bet on footy.
Surely they shared you a couple of beers, though.
Yeah, they gave me a couple of beers, so that was okay. But that just shows you a bit about my punting abilities. That here I am, I've tipped them all, and haven't put 20 on the great man and the Tigers, and I think they were pretty happy because they had no idea. They thought Richmond would win, but they said, "What's a Norm Smith?" I said, "Mate, if I've got to explain that, mate, I'm not going to sit here with you." But mate, it's been great chatting. I said, if you ever want me again, or if you ever want to try and, like I said, I'm always happy to introduce you to other Richmond people. If you want to sort of connect with them, that's fine.
Fantastic.
That'd be fantastic.
Take you up on that.
Absolutely. Thanks again so much for your time tonight, Craig. We really appreciate it, and hopefully Tigers can go for 3 in a row.
That's it. Go Tigers, eh?
Go the Tigers.
There you go.
Thank you so much.